the fourth of our formal questions. Then we get to the fun bit where we all talk together. And the question I have for the panelists and myself is, so how will we know when we get there? What does a reconciled Canada look like? What are we actually trying to do, and what does it look like when we get there?
I wrote down a few things here. This one was like the toughest question for me. I don't really know, and I don't even know if I should be answering that, but I guess a few things came to mind. I guess for sure when all the 94 calls to action have been addressed in Canada by our government, I think that would be, I guess somewhat to me, it would be a symbol of like we're coming to a close of this reconciliation process. I guess not that it's over, but yeah, that it's been implemented, and I think then big changes would start to show. But I also asked my kids this, and this was really interesting. So I talk to them often about residential schools and what I do with RISE. They're really interested in that. And so I was asking them this weekend to help me do my homework for this event. And so I wanted to interview them and ask them, and this really, I don't know why, it just really hit me, but I asked my son, how will you know when we've reconciled? What does Canada look like? That's when are we going to know when we've like finished the work of reconciliation? And he said, well, when everyone knows what happened and when they accept our apology. And that really just struck me, and I thought, okay, I'm good with that. That's a good enough answer for me. And yeah, I think just one more thing I wanted to say, and I keep quoting Justice Murray Sinclair, but he said, we've all been taught to believe in Aboriginal inferiority and European superiority, and that's wrong. So I think when that starts to shift, that's when it's going to be true equality or equity.
So I think I have sort of two main things that I would be looking forward to know that we have reconciled. And there's a head piece and there's a heart piece. My answer is going to be short. So the head piece is that when some of those metrics come into alignment where Aboriginal people, Indigenous people aren't overrepresented in our prison system, their rates of suicide, tuberculosis, diabetes, all those health factors are the same as their representation in the overall population. Education levels are the same. So when we've got some functional similarity in numbers across the population, that would be an indication to me that reconciliation is working well. And then the heart part, I think for me, is just that I would feel proud of the country, feel proud of Canada. Those two things, I think, would help me or would mean we had reconciled, or that would be a reconciled Canada for me.
So reconciliation is thinking about changing with intent the way we act and live as Canadians. And so there's a few signals for me of that. One is that I mention residential school and everyone knows what I'm talking about. There's no question of it. Everyone understands the impact it had. Everyone understands and connects with what it means to be Canadian with that history. Two is that, and me and Jane were having this discussion on the weekend, is that Indigenous culture is normalized and practiced in our community. It's not on National Aboriginal Day. It's not on Treaty 6 Day. It's every day. And just like every cultural group practices their culture freely and intently and sees themselves in the makeup of our city, in our urban design, in the public art that exists, that Indigenous people are represented, and that's normal, and that's acceptable, and everyone understands that. You're seeing pictures up here of some of the projects that RISE has been involved in, and one of them that Anna Marie and I worked on closely is a project called Reconciling Edmonton, where we found some images. You'll see them, historical images from the signing of treaty to present day that show relationship building happening between Indigenous and settler people in Edmonton. And the second oldest picture we found was from 1905, and it was a gathering on White Avenue. In 1905, it was illegal under federal law for Indigenous people to gather in numbers of 12 or more. It was also against the law to drum or practice ceremony. And both of those things are happening in this picture. It was also illegal for white women to be in the presence of Indigenous men. That was happening in the picture as well. The name at the bottom of the picture was called Indian Dance. And we took these pictures to people and got their feedback. What do you think's happening? Who do you think these people are? What's the story behind this image? And we took the image of the White Avenue Indian dance to a grade 6 class. And every single kid in the class talked about, why is this called Indian dance? These are not Indian people. These are First Nations people. They're practicing their culture. Why would they call it Indian dance? And my mind was blown that in a generation, that word is out of the vocabulary. With intent and thoughtfulness, we can change the culture of Canada, but we have to be willing to, and we have to be intent on doing it. If we're passive about it, it won't change.
Yeah. So it's calls to action. And when I dream in the future what it looks like, one thing I see is that northern schools, which still exist and still are often residential in nature because of the way it is when you're in a small community, you're going to have to, if you survive your first school experience, you're going to have to come into a bigger community for more education. We still lose too many people in that transition. There's an inquiry going on in Thunder Bay right now. You know about that, right? For all the kids who are murdered. Just why is that happening? Why are they coming in off the reserves and dying in such numbers? There's the tragedy at Attawapiskat where kids 6 years old are thinking that they have to kill themselves. Nobody loves them, who cares? And I saw somebody, I wish I'd remembered her name, post on Twitter, here's an address, send some letters to the kids in Attawapiskat, for God's sake, let them know that somebody cares. And it made me think it's as simple as that. For me, reconciliation is the vision of all these northern communities, all these northern schools being sistered with each other, being connected. We have the technology to do this. We have the capacity to do this. This is not an expensive thing to do, but this is a profoundly impactful thing to do. These schools are connected to each other, so the students can talk to each other, so the teachers can share what it is to work in these communities, so the parents can understand what other school communities go through, so that we don't have the kind of isolation, underfunding, and lack of oversight that created the problems with the residential school system to begin with. And those fundamental changes that we need to make can be done. We have the means to do that. And we have the means to partner inner cities with outer communities. I see the day when there will be a network that means that any kid anywhere will come into the larger communities as an Aboriginal kid and feel like they have a place. They know people. There's someone there to catch them. When I came to the city, my dad dropped dead, and I had to get a job. Thank God my sister was there, and thank God I had my two best friends who were Chinese, and so we were the colored girls. By the time we got to our high school, we were the 3 colored girls in our little bug tussle. But they had moved here. I had people to catch me when I landed. When we're reconciled, there will be people to catch all the youth. And we're those people. We're those people. We're those people who can make a place where we want to learn as much about Attawapiskat as we do about Uganda. We want to learn as much about Nain, Labrador. And do you know they practice circus in Nain, Labrador? I work in the arts. I get to know this privileged information. There are touring circuses, for God's sake, European-style circuses that go up to Nain, Labrador and work with the people there, and they adapt it to be specific to that culture and that place. So it's something entirely new. And there's Arctic Cirque, which is a whole wonderful thing that incorporates Inuit culture and Cirque du Soleil culture. And a reconciled Canada means that we understand more and more as an artist what roots we have that rise out of this land that are distinct, that are important, and that can inform what we do, so that when you say you're Canadian, it doesn't mean you drink a certain kind of mass-produced beer. It means you too inherit this great history that we all have and that has so much been lost but still survives.
I just want to say now, so one of the workshops that we do that we deliver is called the Blanket Exercise, and it's an interactive workshop that takes Canadians through our history from an Indigenous perspective. And at the end of our sharing circle, or at the end of the exercise, there's always an opportunity for people to share and reflect. And so I hope that you do that tonight. And we're always interested in the different people who show up to our events and are interested in this topic. And I think back to one sharing circle, there was this gentleman who, I'd say 40-ish, 300-ish pounds, tattooed up and down the arms. And when it came to his turn to speak in the sharing circle, I was like, okay, what's he going to have to say? And he talked about reconciliation being a bug, a mosquito that's been buzzing around. He's kind of heard it. Other people have been swatting it away. But tonight he was bitten. So I hope that tonight you've been bitten and that you need to scratch and you need to react to it. That's my hope.
I think that's